I accidentally stumbled upon my 63-year-old neighbor while checking on him, authentic tales of betrayal. Stepping into his house that day was never part of my plan. A seemingly innocuous oversight, a gesture stemming from a shared sense of community, gradually evolved into a tapestry of intricate complexities. As the first light of dawn broke, my husband set off on his business trip, leaving me to traverse yet another solitary day at home, tidying up and wandering through the endless scroll of social media. As the clock struck 12, a peculiar noise drifted from the vicinity of my neighbor's home. At first, I brushed it off as simple plumbing problems, yet as the noise continued, an unyielding rush of water, my anxiety began to mount. Mr. Harrison, a steadfast inhabitant of the adjacent residence, had devoted 60 years to the very fabric of the community. Recently bereaved, he now discovered himself traversing the quietude of existence in solitude. He had a tender soul, radiating a quiet elegance that wrapped around him like a delicate garment. Throughout the years, my husband and I have shared amiable exchanges with him, though I wouldn't define our relationship as especially intimate. Still, the idea persisted in my thoughts that maybe something was not quite right. He may have tripped or fallen. The front door lingered open just a crack, heightening my sense of discomfort. I knocked softly, my voice lifting into the quiet. "Mr. Harrison? Are you all right?" The stillness hung in the atmosphere, deep and unyielding. A fleeting moment of doubt enveloped me, an uneasy sensation stirring within, as I considered crossing the threshold of an unfamiliar home without permission. Nevertheless, the sound of flowing water grew stronger, and my mind started to spin with possibilities. What if he remained there, oblivious and inert? What if he needed help? Upon crossing the threshold, a fierce rhythm echoed in my chest. The living room radiated an air of calm and organization, interrupted solely by the faint hint of aftershave that lingered softly in the space. Compelled by the echo, I ventured toward the bathroom. The door lingered slightly open, a narrow gap that permitted delicate tendrils of steam to drift into the hallway. "Mr. Harrison." I elevated my voice again, the resonance carrying a sense of urgency. And then I realized he was in the bathroom and immediately turned away, embarrassed. The bathroom mirror, cloaked in a misty shroud, presented an unexpected tableau that captured my attention. My breath caught in my throat as I remained frozen, consumed by the weight of my embarrassment over the mistake I had made. Just as I was on the verge of retreating, he moved ever so slightly, his eyes locking onto mine through the mirror's reflection. His eyes widened in astonishment, but he quickly composed himself with a calm expression. With a quick motion, he quickly covered himself with a towel and stepped away from view. I sincerely apologize." My words faltered, a rush of warmth igniting my cheeks. The gentle murmur of water echoed in my ears, awakening a disquieting sensation deep within me. He released a soft laugh, a comforting and inviting melody that hung in the atmosphere. "No damage sustained. I ought to have locked the door myself. Your kindness shone through unmistakably." His response took me by surprise. Though irritation would have been the anticipated reaction for many, he seemed to derive a peculiar enjoyment from the circumstance. He stood there, composed and calm, gently brushing water from his hair. His tranquil presence only heightened my feeling of disarray. "I'll leave," I murmured, withdrawing gradually. As I turned, his voice was gentle. "Wait, I truly appreciate you checking in on me. I never meant to intrude. It brings a sense of solace to understand that there is someone who genuinely cares." His words lingered in my mind, reverberating long after I had made my way back home. I comforted myself with the thought that it was just a fleeting encounter, a harmless interaction, but deep down, I felt a significant transformation had taken place. The subsequent days unfolded with a peculiar mixture of fascination and unease. I avoided Mr. Harrison, my cheeks burning with embarrassment at the mere idea of crossing paths with him. Yet, the image of him remained etched in my mind. It transcended the confines of his mere appearance. It was the calmness he radiated, the gentle embrace of his kindness. He did not experience anger or discomfort. Instead, he personified a profound sense of understanding. On a tranquil afternoon, as I attended to the bushes in my backyard, a voice unexpectedly pierced the silence, startling me. With a grin, he leaned against the fence that separated our properties and remarked on my evident talent for gardening. At first, I was inclined to mutter a few words and retreat, but his inviting tone took me by surprise. "It seems more a battle than a talent," I replied, forcing a slight laugh. He released a gentle chuckle and moved closer. "You are exceeding my own abilities. It was my wife who held the genuine gift for such affairs." His expression softened, unveiling a momentary flicker of sadness in his eyes. "I have permitted most of her plants to fade, unable to provide the nurturing they needed." A delicate tremor resonated in his voice, drawing me in and demanding my attention. "I could assist if you desire," I proposed, the words escaping my mouth before I had the opportunity to ponder their significance. And so, it began. The following days fell into a comforting cadence. I would spend an hour or two in his yard, helping him tend to the unruly shrubs and the neglected flower beds. He would sit beside me, weaving stories of his departed wife, reminiscing about his years in the classroom, and envisioning the journeys he had longed to undertake, but never quite realized. His voice wrapped around me, deep and steady, like a comforting tune that hangs in the atmosphere. At first glance, it appeared utterly benign, two neighbors cultivating a connection. Nevertheless, the fervor of his stare would frequently linger in my thoughts long after it seemed fitting. I noticed the way his eyes brightened at the sound of my laughter, how his fingers would gently brush against my hand as we worked side by side, and I couldn't help but feel my heart flutter each time it happened. On a sun-drenched afternoon, as we basked in the splendor of the newly arranged garden, he presented me with a glass of lemonade. Our hands brushed accidentally, and for a brief second, we froze, unsure of how to react. In a moment that seemed to stretch beyond time, we remained utterly still. "You've achieved more for this place than I have in years," he murmured, his eyes fixed intently on mine. "It's nothing," I replied, my voice quieter than I had intended. "It's not nothing," he said, and the gravity of his voice caused my breath to hitch in my throat. I turned my eyes away, trying to dismiss it with a chuckle. "Perhaps you just needed a bit of help. Or maybe I just needed a gentle nudge to remember the countless joys that life continues to present," he said, his voice steady and his gaze unwavering. It rendered me speechless. A part of my soul longed to withdraw, to murmur to myself that I was tethered by the vows of marriage, that this was simply an expression of neighborly kindness. Still, another part of me felt an undeniable pull towards him, unable to ignore the unmistakable spark that danced between us. That evening, a transformation occurred. A tranquil hush wrapped around the surroundings, as a delicate rain whispered against the windows. Earlier, my husband contacted me to share that his trip would be extended by another week. I feigned understanding during the phone call, but deep down, the weight of loneliness pressed heavily upon my heart. It had never crossed my mind to pay a visit to Mr. Whitmore that evening, yet there I found myself at his doorstep, a plate of cookies in hand. Baking had become my refuge, a delightful escape from the chaos around me. With a gentle push, he opened the door, a warm smile illuminating his face, and his eyes glimmered with a surprising joy. He inquired, gesturing toward the cookies, and I couldn't shake the feeling of foolishness as I spoke. "I thought you might enjoy something sweet," yet I found myself unable to pull away. He ushered me in, and before long, we were settled in his cozy living room, the flickering flames casting a soothing warmth that contrasted beautifully with the chill outside. We immersed ourselves in dialogue, as was our tradition, exploring both the significant and the mundane. This evening, however, bore an undeniable sense of elegance. A silent intimacy hung in the air, a feeling we both recognized but opted to leave unspoken. As I set my glass down on the coffee table, he reached out, catching it just in time to prevent it from spilling over. Our hands brushed again, and a heavy silence lingered between our unspoken emotions. I lifted my eyes to his, sharing a silent exchange filled with questions and uncertainties. "If you're feeling uneasy, you don't have to stay," he murmured softly. His voice remained steady, though tinged with a subtle doubt. "I'm not uncomfortable," I whispered, the words escaping my lips before I could catch them. A sense of liberation washed over me, as if a barrier had been irrevocably broken. He stepped closer, while I remained frozen in place, overwhelmed by the moment. The moment was charged with unspoken emotions, a silent acknowledgement passing between us. A wave of conflicting emotions engulfed me, caught between gratitude and guilt. The rain outside intensified, drumming against the window, while the room enveloped us in a profound silence, heavy with the burden of unvoiced thoughts. He paused briefly, his eyes locked onto mine, as though extending a quiet invitation to withdraw, to express my disagreement. Yet, I held back, as the last echoes dissipated. We remained in silence, the weight of recent events surrounding us like a dense fog. He reached out, his hand enveloping mine with a gentle touch, his thumb tracing a tender path across my skin. "I never meant to add any complexity to your life," he whispered softly. Words slipped through my fingers. A storm of guilt and longing churned within me, woven together with strands of fear and exhilaration. A wave of shame ought to have enveloped me, and in truth, a sliver of my essence felt its presence. Yet, there existed another dimension, one I was reluctant to admit, that brought with it an exhilarating sense of freedom, as if I had finally broken free from a stifling prison. To my utter surprise, I found myself included without any prior knowledge. I stayed much longer than was prudent that night, leaving only when the rain had at last ceased. As I journeyed home, a heaviness enveloped my heart, and my mind swirled in a tumult of doubt. What had I created? And why, despite everything, did I long to feel it again? The days that followed emerged shrouded in a fog of regret and longing. Every glance shared with my husband carried a weight of guilt I could not easily shed. Every solitary moment evoked the vivid memories of that night. I comforted myself with the thought that it was merely a mistake, a fleeting moment destined to linger only in the past, never to resurface again. Still, the ache in my chest murmured an alternate reality. Mr. Whitmore and I initially avoided each other, as if pretending not to know could somehow erase the truth of what had occurred. Nevertheless, the silence that hung in the air between us was unbearable. One evening, I found myself at the fence that separated our yards, and he was already present, as though he had foreseen my coming. As I pondered our predicament, he whispered, his eyes fixed intently on mine, "I wish to inflict no hurt or disturb your existence." "Neither do I," I replied, though my voice trembled. Truthfully, I found myself grappling with emotions I thought I had long buried. With a heavy sigh, he leaned against the fence. "For countless years, I have roamed in solitude, convincing myself that companionship was superfluous. Yet your presence transformed everything, and I—" He halted, his head shaking slightly, as though he were searching for the ideal expression. This experience surpassed all that I had anticipated, every single aspect of it. My eyes brimmed with the threat of tears. "The blame does not rest entirely on your shoulders. I too must accept my share of the responsibility for permitting it to transpire. I am the person who—" "Please don't," he interjected, his voice barely above a whisper. "This circumstance is unfair to both you and your husband, even in light of our mutual obligations." His words intended to comfort, but instead, they only intensified the anguish. "What course of action shall we pursue next?" After a brief hesitation, he reached out and took my hand firmly. "We press onward. Let us shroud this event in the depths of our recollection." However, the process of forgetting revealed itself to be much more intricate than simply speaking the words. The air crackled with an unspoken tension, steadfast and unwavering, even as we tried to keep our distance. Every serendipitous meeting, every brief glance, appeared to reopen a long-healed scar. My husband, oblivious to the tempest raging inside me, continued with his daily routines, amplifying my isolation as never before. One evening, my husband asked what was causing my recent sense of detachment. His question caught me off guard. In that ephemeral moment, I pondered the possibility of laying everything bare before him. Nevertheless, the fear of losing everything restrained me. Instead, I conjured an excuse, asserting that exhaustion had enveloped me, that existence had transformed into a tempest of anxiety. He accepted my response without exploring further. Still, the weight of the falsehood remained heavy in my heart. Mr. Harrison, true to his word, began to pull away. He stopped coming to the fence, and the invitations for me to join him faded away. The agony surpassed my expectations, yet I console myself with the thought that it was, in the end, for a noble cause. I committed myself to my marriage, working tirelessly to mend what I had let slip away. From time to time, I would catch a glimpse of him nurturing his garden. Once again, my heart would ache with a well-known sorrow. As the months progressed, the flow of life slowly returned to its well-known tempo. Still, the memory of that evening, of the moments we shared, remained with me, never quite disappearing. It lingered in the quiet, in the spaces that divided my reflections. I often found myself contemplating if he harbored those identical emotions, if he still carried me in his mind as I did him. In the end, there lingered a void of closure, an absence of neat resolution. It is simply the calm recognition that some choices have left their indelible impressions on our lives. Some connections, no matter how fleeting, possess the extraordinary ability to shape your existence for eternity.